Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Hacking Uncertainty. And today we have a very special guest. As you know, we're going to talk about mental health, and we have a real expert among us here today. So, welcome, Marni Chanoff. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me to the show. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm here in Boston, Massachusetts, and I've been practicing psychiatry for many years. I've trained at Harvard Medical School's clinical psychiatry program, and I've worked in different clinical areas for many years. I am practicing integrative psychiatry, which is a comprehensive way of working with mental health issues, both from the medical perspective, from the Western model, where we use medications when necessary, we use psychotherapy, talking therapy, and then we bring in a lot of other modalities like diet and lifestyle and exercise and mindfulness and meditation. And so it's a real comprehensive way of thinking about our mental health.
Okay, great. So let's get started. As you know, Marni, I spend a lot of time talking to Gen Zs and millennials, but in particular, a lot of Gen Zs, ages 16 to 23, what I've been finding is that they're going through a very difficult time right now. Mm. It's not only a very difficult time professionally in terms of their studies, they're, trying to find a job, the movement or the transition from high school to university in terms of their subject, school and all that. But emotionally, they're going through a very difficult time. And sometimes I speak to some of these students and I can tell that some of them are suffering a little bit in the sense that I'm not sure whether there's a mental health issue there. And I think many times they're not sure whether there's a mental health issue. So at what point should we realize that we have a mental health issue? What are the things that we need to be looking out for?
That's a great question. And I think one thing just to recognize is that this age range, this sort of developmental period in one's life is a very challenging time. It's a time of great transition. It's also a time when there's a lot of maturing very quickly that happens as you're moving through these big changes. And so it's not supposed to be an easy time. And so we can expect that people will have ups and downs and people will have their struggles and their challenges. So the question about when to worry and when to seek medical attention or care is really important. I think it's helpful to look at depression as a set of experiences and a set of symptoms. And we know that actually depression rates are 3 times higher right now since the pandemic than before. And we see this especially in young adults. So I think this is a very relevant question. And the symptoms that a lot of people struggle with when they're depressed are difficulty sleeping, lack of energy, difficulty with concentration, not being able to focus, not being able to function in your normal capacity, difficulty with appetite, difficulty with getting through your daily functioning. So whether it's taking care of yourself or taking care of others, those are the things, are you able to really function in your day to day? People struggle with hopelessness and helplessness. And so those are some of the big symptoms that we look out for. And then, of course, there's always the worry that if these things go on long enough and people experience this for long enough, they start to develop a real hopelessness that can lend itself to suicidal thinking. And we know that suicidal thinking is higher than years previously as well, especially in young adults. And so if you're starting to think about suicide or harming yourself in any way, that's a really important time to reach out for help. And medical attention, I should say specifically.
Okay, let's talk about this because, one of the things that I've noticed from Gen Zs is they often don't like to ask for help. Mm. And they, a lot of the interviews we've been doing on this show, also with high school students and young college students, is that they have this impression that millennials and baby boomers don't really care. So they don't they feel it's almost like us and them, and they don't ask for help. And I think what would be interesting here is what can be done in terms of prevention, because we'll talk about it later. But a lot of people think, well, if you have mental health, then maybe you need to go see a doctor, and they're going to give you a pill. And we all know what pills are all about. And sure, pills can be useful when you need a pill, but probably a lot of stuff you can do before you need a pill. So what are some of the things that an individual can do to prevent getting into this situation? Or even when they think they're starting to get into this situation, like, regain their compass, their internal compass in terms of, where they should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes me really, really sad to hear that young people feel like they are forgotten and uncared for. And I think it may be a symptom of our kind of Western culture, where independence and autonomy and self-sufficiency are sort of what we're trained to do from a very early age. Like, this is what we value as a culture. And I guess I'm not surprised to hear that, because what we also know is that people are feeling lonelier and more isolated than ever before. What are the goals? Get my own apartment, be financially independent, move, across the country, move across the globe as quickly as I can, and seek these new opportunities. And what we then see are people feel very, very alone, and separate from their families, separate from their culture, separate from their values. And that, to me, is one of the most scary things about this time in one's life. So I think one of the most important things is to not let yourself go down that rabbit hole of, I am alone and I have to figure this out for myself. And to really think about, who might you be able to reach out to? And some people don't have the luxury of reaching out to parents or relatives that they can really rely on. So it's then even more important to figure out, well, who can I find? And what are my resources? Sometimes it's a teacher, sometimes it's a coach, sometimes it's someone at one's church or place of worship. And to really allow yourself to look for that person, and to tell yourself that I'm not supposed to be so alone. This is not how we are designed as human beings. We're not wired to be alone. And to know that, and to trust that, and to really seek out. And if you find a person and they don't seem quite interested, keep moving. Mentorship is something that is so important, whether it's professional and personal mentorship. It's so important. And I think it's one of those things that may have been lost more recently, as we're moving towards independence and self-sufficiency.
Yeah. Before the show, we talked a little bit about this idea of belief in yourself and self-agency.
Yeah.
Tell me more about your thoughts about that.
Well, that's something that has to be cultivated. We all have to cultivate sort of a knowing of ourselves and a trusting of our gut. And this is the work I do with a lot of young adults. Some young people I work with will say, yeah, I just don't trust my gut feeling. I don't know if I should. And, I believe that we all have a real intuition and a real internal compass that can help us find our way through this really scary, daunting world. And that takes time, and it takes practice, and it's a skill. And so even if you don't feel like you can trust that gut feeling, I think it's important to really pay attention to it, and to tune into it, and to listen to it. You don't have to trust it right away, but to at least give it some airspace. So many people who are struggling have such negativity. This isn't going to work. I'm not good enough. I'm going to fail. What if I fail? What's going to happen then? And so if you can give that gut feeling and your instinct some airtime and practice that, and keep practicing that, at least so it can balance out all the fear and anxiety and worry, I think that's a really good place to start.
Yeah. you had told me earlier that for a while there you were very active with yoga, right?
I still am. Yeah.
Well, you still are. You know, I
Mhm.
tried yoga, but I'm so tall that I really had a hard time with it.
You got to keep trying.
Yeah, you got to keep trying. So, talk to me about yoga because you know I talk to a lot of students, and some students tell me, well, yoga, it's for people that they're a little bit lost. There's this whole thing about yoga that people think that it's almost like not compatible with religion or beliefs.
Mm.
That it's something that's like if you're totally lost in your life, then you do yoga. But I don't think it is incompatible with religion or with all kinds of other things that beliefs people can have, right? I mean, what do you think?
I don't think that's true at all. And in fact, people from all over the world and from all religions and all cultures gravitate towards yoga. It's a universal practice. And, I'm actually happy to hear that people think of yoga as something that is really kind of deep and philosophical, because yoga in the West has turned into more of a exercise or physical practice. It's all about the postures. And if you can't put yourself in a pretzel, you shouldn't do yoga. Kind of like what you were saying, I'm too tall to do yoga, right? And it's not true. The practice of yoga is around the idea is to become one with oneself, to bring the mind and the body together so they're more aligned. And if you can feel grounded in your body through the practice of yoga, what it does is it allows your mind to focus not on all of the everyday worry, anxiety, fear, but more internally. It shifts your focus so that you can focus inward and you can start to develop a relationship with yourself and a trust in your body, a trust in your mind, a trust in your own resilience. And that's the power of yoga. It has nothing to do with religion. There's yoga philosophy, which you can, if you're interested in learning, you can find it, but you don't have to go there. In fact, for the first 15 years I practiced yoga, I didn't want to become too intellectual about it because I have a tendency to be very intellectual about things. I didn't want to get too heady. I didn't want to be in my head. I wanted to actually focus on being in my body. And that was really the practice for me. And through that, you then find this kind of solid foundation on which you can start focusing on your breath, which we know has a real ability to calm your own nervous system, right? So then you feel more in control of your own nervous system, your own physiology. And so if you're in a really tough position, you don't have to be so worried if you're going to get through it. You can just go to your breath and be grounded in yourself.
I'm going to ask you a question that I've always wanted to be able to ask this question to an expert. I shake my leg. Actually, right now you can't notice it because this is a heavy desk, but I'm always shaking my leg.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of people tell me, do you have a problem? I mean, are you like, why are you shaking your leg? Is there anything associated to shaking your leg?
Well, it's a sign of your own energy, right? So you're probably an extremely energetic person. You probably have a lot going on all the time. You're doing a lot all the time, but it is a sign of some sort of like restlessness, right? And so if it is a sign that you're feeling kind of restless or a little agitated or a little impatient, or you need to get up back, and be back on the move to feel comfortable, then it may be a sign that maybe you want to sort of like start trying to cultivate a little more calm in the body. And you might find that might help you feel a little more calm in your mind.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty calm in my mind, but yeah, so there's nothing really wrong with me for shaking my leg, right? No.
No. If it bothers you, then,
I actually enjoy it because it's not that I'm restless, but I'm a 24/7 kind of person, so I want to do the next thing. And a lot of young people, they shake their leg, but usually a lot of people tell me, yeah, but maybe like Gen Zs shake their leg, but not baby boomers, So, but in any case, Marni, talk to me more about healing, because You talked earlier also to me before the program about how healing was so important in terms of prevention, and where we should move towards a I don't know, like a medical approach that's more relationship based, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you understand the person,
Yeah,
and you understand everything going around the person.
right,
I heard the other day that the average medical visit is like 17 minutes.
right. That's long.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
long. Yeah, sometimes it's like
Yeah.
5 minutes, and like, here, take 2 aspirins and come back to me. But so,
Mhm.
uh, what is this relationship based approach? And talk to me about healing.
Yeah. We all have such a tremendous need to be known and to be seen and to be heard. I think it's a basic need. It's what makes us human. We are relational beings. And I think that if someone is hurting and someone's alone and someone is doubting themselves, I don't think there's anything more healing than finding someone who is interested in you and who believes in you and wants to hear your story and takes this non-judgmental, non-critical, accepting, loving view of you. I think that's the most healing thing around, but it takes time.
Yeah, where do you find a person like that that's non-judgmental and all those things?
It takes time, and no one's perfect, and people are going to make mistakes, and so it takes time to really create that kind of relationship. Like we were talking before, you don't find a mentor and then after one visit you tell them your entire life story and all your deepest darkest secrets. It takes time, and trust takes time. Trust is something that you build over time. So someone has to be reliable. Someone has to show you, not just say they're going to be your mentor, but they're going to have to show you what they mean by that. And then slowly you can start to believe them, right?
Right.
So that is the therapeutic relationship. And you can find that in all kinds of relationships, but that is where the healing starts. But Paris, I also think that you can cultivate that kind of relationship with yourself. And we have so many modalities where we know that if you care for yourself, if you care for your mind and you care for your body, which is not easy for people. A lot of people hear self-care and they think it's indulgent, or they think it's a luxury, or they think it's for wealthy people or for people who go to the spa. And it's not true. If you can learn to love yourself and take care of your mind and your body, which is one, we know from our yoga talk, right? And you can give yourself that time and space and attention, you can develop that kind of trust within yourself. And I think if you can learn to love yourself, it becomes easier to love other people. And then your relationships become more satisfying and deeper and healing. You can have a healing relationship with a friend.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Marni. I had a student the other day in one of my classes tell me that the marriage is breaking down. With a lot of we have over 50% of marriages that break down.
Mm.
Is there a cause to that that's also related to what we're talking about here?
There may be. I mean, I think we could probably extrapolate that if people are feeling like they don't know how to love themselves and they don't have the support to feel like they are a lovable, good enough person, then how do you really start to fully, authentically engage and love another person? How do you do that?
If you don't love yourself, that cannot be a healthy relationship, right?
It's very challenging, very challenging. And we know that, if someone is trying to get their needs met by someone else fully, and they don't have the capacity to soothe themselves or to feel confident in themselves, it's not going to work because the other person cannot fill that void. Sure, it's a partnership, and you give and you take, and you give and you receive, but you can't rely on other people to fill that need. And so then you end up just feeling either resentful or overly dependent, and it doesn't work very well.
Yeah, no, I think that's, so talk to me more about healing, the role of diet, all this kind of stuff that helps our bodies be better as well.
So this is a really exciting time in the field of mental health and in medicine in general, where people are starting to pay attention to the role of nutrition in both our mental and physical health. And we now know, I don't know if you've heard about the microbiome, our gut health, for instance. Yeah. We have trillions and trillions of bacteria in our gut. And now we understand that the balance of the bacteria actually has a profound effect on our mind. And that if you can feed your gut and take care of your gut through food and exercise and lifestyle, that you have a direct relationship with the quality of your thinking and your mood and your anxiety level. This is really new research, and it's very exciting. There have been a couple of randomized control studies looking at people who have moved from a highly processed diet, kind of the fast food culture, takeout food culture, towards home cooking, towards a mostly plant-based diet, Mediterranean style eating, which, you enjoy so much in Spain, don't you?
Yeah.
Right?
I just had a very healthy lunch at a place called Honest Greens here. It's fast food, but it's amazingly healthy. Uh-huh. I'm sure a lot of our students that are watching would share that thought, that, and you feel good when you finish a meal like that.
You feel good. You do. And it's not just a coincidence. You are feeling good because you are giving your body the nutrients and and you're creating an environment in your gut so that this good bacteria can really flourish. And then we know that helps your mood and your thinking so very much. And this is all really new research. And they've done this study with young adults. Actually, a study came out a couple of years ago looking at young adults on a college campus. And when they did this diet intervention, their depression improved. So there's diet, right? And then there's also, sleep. There's more and more sleep research. Sleep is the best medicine of all. If you
without a doubt. Sleep, right? And
walking. These things matter, and they're not the pills, right?
No, they're not the pills. And there was a comment here about meditation. And people ask me a lot, Professor, how do you disconnect? Because as you said, I'm shaking my leg all day. I'm 24/7. So what do you do to disconnect? And everybody has their own form of meditation.
That's right.
For me, it's, every Sunday I go to church and I don't really listen to the homily. It's my moment to disconnect. Mm-hmm. And that's what gives me this, because my phone's not on. I have a moment to really concentrate on myself and ask myself, am I happy with my life? Mm-hmm. Am I happy with what I'm doing? So whether you find that, as you said, in your place of worship, or you find it with, talking to someone that really cares. I'll never forget this. I had this friend of mine, he was 82 years old. And he said to me, Paris, the biggest lesson I learned in my life, he said, but it took me too long to learn it, is don't hang around people that tolerate you. Mm. Hang around people that celebrate you. Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful.
That is so important. So you don't need to have a million friends. Mm-hmm. You need to have a couple of people around you that really care.
That's right. That's right. And who shine a light on your very best parts of yourself so that you can see them too. Right?
Now, what about people that are suicidal. Well, at what point can one become suicidal? How can that occur? And what should that person do that starts to think a little bit suicidal?
I think this is what's most concerning right now, right? Because people, especially with COVID, people are truly disconnected from their normal supports in many cases. So I think that if anyone is starting to have even just the, inkling of suicide, I would reach out for help and figure out what that is. So if it's a primary care doctor, if it's a mental health counseling center on a college campus, there's, at least in the States, there's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. You can call 24/7. And you can reach out and get someone on the phone and just share this with them. When I was in my residency training, which was really intense and really challenging, and there were many nights on call that I was very alone in the hospital. You feel like you're the only person, that you can rely on because you're like the only psychiatrist around, right? The mantra was never worry alone. There was always someone I could call. If I was, if I didn't know what I was doing, if I was afraid of, what I was supposed to do next, there was always someone that I could call. I didn't call. Most of the time I never called, but knowing there was someone to call was so important. And so I think, one really great thing that could come from our talk today would be for each person listening to just, who is on my list? I think we all need a list. Who is on my list? Is it a friend? Is it a family member? Is it a clergy person? Is it the 1-800-273-TALK? Who's on my list so that that you can reach out. And I think if you're starting to have, or if you've had suicidal thinking, that it is a sign that you might be clinically depressed. And it is a sign that, medical attention is really what you need. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. Sometimes, I sort of navigate two worlds of Western medicine, Eastern medicine, the yoga world, the psychiatry world. And sometimes people feel like you're either in one camp or the other. And one camp is good for this, the other camp isn't. I think the thing that we can do is take the best of both of these worlds, the spiritual world, the medical world, right? And the community and the diet and the lifestyle, and put all of these things together and take the best of each one, right? So you don't have to choose. You can have multiple people in multiple camps on your side, and you can have multiple people in different roles in your life that you reach out to at different times. And the medical world and the spiritual world and the psychology world and the mentorship world, they can all work together. And I think that's when the medicine is most powerful.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that. There's a question here about self-confidence. How do you build self-confidence? And what's the role of self-confidence in better relationships?
So I think confidence is, if you're going to be authentically confident in yourself, you have to give yourself time. You also have to be willing to take on some risk. Yep, there's my dog. You have to be willing to take on some risk. So what I often try to help people do is figure out, what is the next step here, right? So what is the next thing you want to try on? And of course, it's going to feel scary, and you're going to feel worried, and you're going to feel like you might fail. How much of that can you take on without your anxiety overwhelming kind of your resilience? And I think there's always this dance between how resilient you are and how anxious or afraid you might feel. And I always tell people, just take one step at a time and make it a small step. Because when you're trying to build this confidence in the beginning, I think what's really important is to start to build small successes. Because even if it's a small success, it will help you to start build a little bit of confidence. And then you take another small step. So you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. And you don't want to go too fast. It's slow and steady. And then that's a slow kind of internal build of confidence that if you can start building from there, it can last a lifetime.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. I don't want to sugarcoat it because it's not easy.
No, I can imagine. Let me ask you another subject, Marni. I talk a lot to students from the bottom of the pyramid or inner city students who, they don't have a lot of money, low income students. And the issue of money sometimes comes up, which is, how happy does money make us? And from your experience, you've dealt with a lot of people, and you probably dealt with a lot of people that had quite a bit of money. Do you think money brings us happiness?
Money alone does not bring happiness. But some money brings resources, and some money and enough money brings a certain level of comfort that if you don't have it, you can be extremely uncomfortable and you can be very unhappy. So it's not the answer, but it also is part of the picture. And if you don't have it, it's hard. And that's not something to negate, that's not something to discount. And so if you are a person who is struggling to get food on the table or to figure out where your next, winter coat is going to come from, that's extremely difficult. And you're more vulnerable to mental health issues, for sure.
But isn't it also depending on the culture? I mean, I've traveled all over the world. I've actually been to 88 countries in my life. And I'm here because of COVID. Otherwise, I'm usually traveling, almost a week a month. And some of the happiest countries in the world that I've been to, the Philippines, Brazil, places like that, where I'm sure they struggled to put food on the table. But when they did, they were ecstatic. And they appreciated things in their life much more than most people that have money.
Yeah, I have also, been very lucky to be able to travel and experience that. I think that what I find in many of these cultures is a real solid connection with community, with family, with culture, and oftentimes with religion. And so those are often the things that we are missing in our culture, which money cannot bring to us, right? But it may mean that we rely more on money to get our needs met in a way that these other cultures and countries don't.
Yeah. So I think it goes back to, we need to make a list. We need to make a list of the people that we would call, that would celebrate us, that care, that sincerely care. I had an amazing situation during COVID. I got sick during COVID, and I was amazed. I did a video and it went viral because people like that sort of thing when somebody gets sick and stuff. It's drama. It's like a reality show. But what I noticed after the the whole thing was that a lot of students were going through a very hard time. And one student reached out to me very worried about his. I mean, I got very worried about him because I got the feeling he was a little bit suicidal. He said, I can't turn to my parents. I can't turn to my friends. I can only turn to you, Professor. And I made the time to really help him, just to talk to him. And it's just talking to him, because I didn't solve any of his issues or anything, but somebody cared. And then I'll never forget, I said to him, I was, keeping track of him. Like every week I was messaging him on WhatsApp to see how he was doing. And I'll never forget. So 2 weeks went by, I hadn't heard from him. So I messaged him and I asked him, so how are you doing? And he said, Professor, I can't talk right now. I'm on a date. And he said, and there was a smiley, like, one of these emojis smiling. And I thought, it's not, the guy was back on his feet. And it's so easy sometimes, all you need is a little bit of a helping hand. As you said, to reach out. And unfortunately, our generation, well, our young kids are, Gen Zs, millennials, we are teaching everybody that they need to be autonomous.
Right.
I was thrown out of the house when I was 18. It's like, you're going to college. You're not coming back here. And I never came back. Actually, I got thrown out of the house to boarding school when I was 16. But so I think that often, we have this feeling that we need to be strong, that only the strong survive, that we shouldn't ask for help, that we have to be autonomous. It's not a sign of weakness to ask for help. It's a sign of strength, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it can be one of the hardest things that we do, to say, I need you. I need help, right? That can be extremely difficult. And again, sometimes people disappoint you. And so, if someone disappoints, not every professor is going to be like you. Not every professor is going to pick up the phone or send back that text or check in for all kinds of reasons. And it doesn't mean they're bad professors. It just means that's not what they're comfortable doing. And so you have to keep searching. And I think, find who's on your list. I remember when I was in my 20s and I went through a period where I was feeling very alone. I actually called one of my very close friends and said, if there's a disaster, can I be on your list? I really called her and said, can I be on your list? And she said, of course. And that phone call, I will never forget, because I felt the need to reach out to her in that way and make sure I was on her list. And by her saying absolutely, it was so important to me, and that's the kind of thing. And it wasn't an easy call. I mean, she was a wonderful friend and still is, but not everyone has that. And so it's like one of those risks and those kind of small steps forward, I think, that we all have to, sort of challenge ourselves to do. The other thing that I hear a lot from people is how hard it is to be vulnerable. And Brene Brown has done an incredible job of shining a light on vulnerability. And people have a really difficult time being vulnerable.
I can imagine, especially in a relationship, right?
In relationships, to need someone, to need something, and to show people that you're not perfect, that you don't have it all figured out, that you too are scared, that you too suffer. That's really hard. Maybe harder for Gen Zs now. I'm not sure if that's true or not. I think it's always been hard.
Yeah, I had an interview with someone the other day that said that the most important thing for her when she was younger was coming to terms with her identity. And I think this is part of the belief in yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one should be judging you.
Right. And hopefully this is a moment in time where we're all taking a hard look at that. There's an incredible amount of energy around acceptance and inclusion and equity. And I hope that this helps people feel like they can celebrate their own individualism and their own uniqueness and their own identity more. I hope so.
Great. Marni, it's been an amazing pleasure to have you here today. I think we have a little bit of time for some questions.
Great.
Do we have any questions from the viewers here? Lots of interesting comments I've seen here, but how about some questions? One question that I heard, Marni, was, do you take online consultations?
That's pretty tricky. As a psychiatrist, I have a medical license, and I'm medically licensed to practice in Massachusetts. So right now, telehealth is exploding, which has been great in many ways, right? Like we can do this, and it's sort of like, okay, fine, this is very easy. And I think for certain things, it works really well. Unfortunately, for medical issues, I have to stay within the state of Massachusetts right now.
Okay, here we have a really good question for you. Is the mental level of support needed by a male different from that needed by a female? Meaning, are men stronger? I think I can answer that question.
Yeah, you probably could. No, men are not stronger.
And you're going to leave it at that, right?
Period.
Okay.
Exclamation point. I don't think it's a gender thing. I think it's an individual thing. And sure, certain men, and in fact, Brene Brown's work shows certain men feel like they can't reach out, right? It's harder for men, and that is true. Men are raised to believe that they shouldn't need perhaps more than women. Perhaps, maybe that's changing. But we all need help and we all need support.
Yeah. I can answer that question. Men are not stronger. Let me tell you, if men were the ones having babies, there'd be very few babies on this earth. So let's, the next question here. What are some good wellness resources you would suggest?
Oh, great question. There's so much online right now. You know, you can have a field day just Googling wellness. I actually, one of my recent projects is to build a resource page on my website, and people are welcome to go to my website. It's marnichanoff.com, and on there's a ton of wellness resources that I would really encourage people to go to, and I'll keep building. So if you want to keep in touch, you can keep in touch with me. You can keep looking back at the website. But if you just Google, you know, Googling is it just makes things so accessible right now. So I don't have a specific one, but I have many on my website that you can look at, including diet, lifestyle, yoga, Ayurveda, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, CDC guidelines for mental health. There's a lot there, so that might be a great starting point.
Okay, another one that is really good. How to get rid of absent-mindedness and how to stay focused longer.
You have to train your brain, right? So, you know how you were saying that you want to get to the next thing really quickly and you've got a million things to do and you're 24/7? That's more and more common now, right? Like we all, like with everything at our fingertips, especially
And
online.
multitasking, that's another big one.
And what?
Multitasking,
right? That's like what we're all like trained to do. We've got 17 screens going. You know, some people, I'm doing telehealth. Some people will show me that they literally have like four computer screens in their office, and they're like, you know, 12 tabs on each one. So that being able to multitask is actually different than being able to do that kind of slower, deeper, more focused work. So I think it's very important for us to have time in our day, if we need to really focus and concentrate, that we slow down and we take away all the distractions. You know, some of my college students that I work with literally cannot resist the urge to check their phone every 5 minutes. They can't get their work done, right? You can appreciate, you can't get your work done. How can you write a 7-page paper if you're checking your phone every 5 minutes or every 2 minutes?
Okay, we have a couple of quick questions here. How to stick to a mental health wellness routine if sticking to a routine overwhelms you and there are too many fire alarm priorities when you work in a demanding place?
Keep it simple. Start with 1 or 2 practices. Maybe 1 or 2 practices that really speak to you, and keep it really simple. And I tell people that if it's not on the schedule, it's not going to happen. Life is too busy. Put it on the schedule. Block off time, even if it's 15 minutes a day to start with. Literally schedule it into your calendar and look at it as your time to practice something new. And once you start becoming more familiar with that, it becomes more of a habit. And then you can start stacking, you know, this idea of stacking habits. You can start stacking on that habit and bringing in a new habit. And it's a slow build. But you got to put it on the schedule, and you have to turn your screen off for 15 minutes and sit with how uncomfortable that is and build those muscles. It's so hard, but you got to build the muscle of being with yourself and knowing your phone will be there in 15 minutes for you. It's not going anywhere.
All right, last question here. Men in my culture are raised to pretend to be strong, and they're taught that crying is not okay. How would you affect how would that affect them in life in the future?
That's tough. It's tough. If you believe that crying is a sign of weakness, my guess is you're still going to cry. You're just going to do it in isolation. And it's really hard to get those kinds of needs met in isolation. So, I think it might be, a good place to start would be to challenge that a little bit and to really look for evidence to support that that is true. And you know what I find? I find if you reach out to someone that you know pretty well and that you trust, and you say, "Do you ever cry? Do you ever feel sad?" Hearing "me too," hearing "yes, of course." Of course, sometimes I feel sad. Of course, sometimes I cry. Hearing that and knowing that the human being in front of you experiences what you're experiencing is often enough to keep trying to find people who will support you.
Okay. And if it helps you at all, I have cried a lot in public. The first thing we need to learn is that, as you said, weakness, showing vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. It just means we're human.
It means we're human, right?
And I just think we need to be more human. Okay, well, Marni, let's wrap it up. My best takeaway today is the list.
Okay.
I think everybody here has to have a list. Hang out with people that celebrate you, not just tolerate you.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to let you close with the final pieces of advice, Marni.
I think that's great. I'm glad that really speaks to you because, like, as I shared, it was really important to me. And then I'll share also just, share yourself, take a risk, share your story, know that other people are also experiencing what you're experiencing. You're not alone and you don't have to be alone. We need each other.
Yes, we do. Thank you for joining us today. And I wish we had, do we have a book coming so that we could promote your book?
I one day, I'm busy. I'm a mom. I've got little kids. I'm running my practice, but the seeds have been planted.
All right, good. Because I think we're going to have a lot of buyers for that book.
Oh,
so
thanks.
Again, Marni, thanks again and have a great day.
Thank you. It's really fun. Really great to talk.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye.